And if it's Tuesday, you know we talk matters business. And thank you so much for tuning in to Y254 News. My name is Doreen Arange. So what is the best way to manage financial constraints? That is the topic we're going to be having tonight, later on in this broadcast. And of course, my guests have come in and they're going to be helping us understand that, which of course forms the question of discussion tonight. So talk to us on 22162, starting with the word news as our text line, or you can tweet at Y254 channel. The hashtag is Y254 updates. But for now, let's start with our top stories. And now IEBC, after they announced the results yesterday, declaring President Uhuru Kenyatta as the president-elect, the NASA leader came out today at WIPA headquarters for the first time after that election in a press briefing, and this is what he had to say.
Our statement here is we reject sham elections. NASA campaigned for electoral justice and democracy. Ladies and the meaningless exercise, a charade purported to be an election, is now behind us. Today, we return to the hard but essential task of making elections count and democracy work in Kenya. This is in line with the task we assigned ourselves at the beginning of our current journey. That we be the people who will end fraud not only in Kenya, but in all of Africa, and with the team that will uproot the evil culture of sham elections with predetermined outcomes. Let me first express NASA's debt of deep gratitude to all Kenyans who heeded our call to keep off the sham election and let Uhuru Kenyatta be the product of a fraud. By heeding the NASA's call, we exposed the so-called talent of numbers in Jubilee to be a fraud. The 8 million plus votes Uhuru claimed to have secured in August to be the fiction and vote fixing and manipulation of figures by the IBC to be real. We gratefully acknowledge the many messages of solidarity received from pro-democracy activists across the globe who have expressed a desire to stand with the Kenyans in our quest for electoral justice. We have deeply appreciated and have been immensely inspired by these solidarity messages. The historical developments which culminated in our call for poll boycotts and to other national resistance wing to NASA's formation have been canvassed adequately in our earlier statements. We will mention this context, but only briefly. Since the Supreme Court announced the presidential election, our country became deeply divided in the question of holding free, fair, and credible elections. This is shocking because no society that calls itself a democracy should be divided on the need for free, fair, and credible elections.
And our Kenya Broadcasting Corporation Managing Director Waithaka Waihenya has left the media house at the expiry of his contract. Mr. Waihenya, who has been serving the state-owned corporation in various capacities for 7 years, will be replaced by Company Secretary Paul Gilani in an acting capacity pending the recruitment of a new MD.
Mr. Waihenya's term expired on October 25th and he did not seek a further extension of his contract. Mr. Waihenya previously served as an editor-in-chief at KBC for 3.5 years. He did oversee massive expansion of the corporation. KBC even managed to introduce 7 new vernacular FM radio stations and 2 TV channels, which
we have all become participants in what I would call pugilistic journalism, where the only news that now seems to be making headlines and top of bulletins is that of people pounding each other. Okay? Politicians calling each other names. To me, that is the lowest that journalism can stoop.
During his term, he was party to the migration from an analog platform to a digital one. The Board of Directors, during its meeting held on October 5th, 2017, considered the managing director's request to leave the corporation following the expiry of his contract, and after due consideration, approved the MD's exit from the corporation with effect from the said date, Mboya made in a statement. Reporting for Y254, I am Hilda Wadhithi.
And now to some rather sad note, reduced supply of subsidized maize flour has hit supermarkets days to the end of the subsidy scheme, raising fears of the shortage. Some supermarkets did not have the flour on Friday, while others had only stocked one brand on reduced supplies of the 90 shilling packet flour.
Has raised the likelihood of shortages and rationing of the subsidized staple food amid delays in evacuating maize at Mombasa port. 3 ships carrying the last batch of 1.1 million bags of subsidized maize docked at Mombasa port last week, and flour is expected to land in the shops in the second week of November. Kimani, who is the Naivas Supermarket Chief Operating Officer, said they have experienced supply challenges in the last couple of days. They had secured enough stocks before, and they are the ones that they have been selling. A survey by the Business Daily on Monday also showed that Tuskys outlets in Nairobi had stocked the Soko brand only, with Naivas having a few packets of the Mama brand. Increased orders were linked to the last week's repeat presidential election as consumers rushed to stock up amid jitters over the outcome of the poll. The Treasury ended the subsidy, which started on May 16th, and the cost of the staple is expected to rise to 120 shillings a packet. Dorina Range for Y254.
And now moving on, the Energy Regulatory Commission, ERC, will begin publishing cooking gas prices to enable consumers push cash-hungry dealers to lower the cost of the commodity. The publishing of the indicative prices across counties will come ahead of the plan to impose price controls on the cooking gas, similar to those introduced on diesel, petrol, and kerosene costs in the year 2010.
The Energy Regulatory Commission has delayed plans to control gas prices, awaiting an upgrade of the LPG storage and handling facilities for issues of single gas tender, commonly referred to as the open tender system. The Ministry of Energy points out that gas prices have remained high despite removal of value-added tax last year and relatively lower prices of crude oil, from which LPG gas is derived. Gas prices dipped below 2,000 shillings on average last July for the first time in many years after the Treasury removed VAT on the product to cut costs and boost uptake among poor households. The proposed indicative prices are controls. Marketers risk a fine of 1 million shillings or withdrawal of the license, or both if found selling fuel above the ERC caps. Under the open tender system, OTS, the ministry will award one oil marketer the rights to import gas in bulk every month on behalf of the entire industry, enjoying huge discounts, like is the case with diesel, petrol, and kerosene.
And our Kenya Railway Corporation has now announced the introduction of the Intercounty train service that will make short stops in 7 county stations. Travelers to Machakos, Makueni, Taita Taveta, Kwale, and Kilifi counties will enjoy cheaper fares from Nairobi and Mombasa on the Intercounty train service that begins on Wednesday.
The stations are at Athi River in Machakos, Emali Kibwezi, Mtito wa Makueni, Voi in Taita Taveta, Maitheni on the border of Taita Taveta and Kwale counties, and Mariakani in Kilifi County. It will take 360 shillings to travel from Mtito economy ticket, which is 140 shillings cheaper than what a bus passenger pays. Those heading to Voi from Nairobi will pay 510 shillings in the economy class, 490 shillings lower than the ordinary fare. The Intercounty train, which will be leaving Mombasa and Nairobi at 8 a.m., will make stopovers of between 3 and 5 minutes at the countryside stations and will be arriving in Nairobi and Mombasa at 2:07 p.m. Mr. Steve Mutuku, the chairman of the Association of Matatu Operators, says the introduction of the service will push vehicles out of business. According to Mr. Mutuku, the government should cushion investors in the Matatu industry against losses by allowing SACCOs to own some wagons in the inter-county train services. Reporting for Y254, I am Hilda Wavibi.
The battle to save Nakumatt supermarkets yesterday took a new turn after rival Tuskys offered to inject 650 million shillings into the troubled retail chain and recurring payment guarantees of between 1.5 billion shillings and 3 billion shillings for the outstanding debts. The offer is subject to the Competition Authority of Kenya, CAK, approving a takeover bid by Tuskys.
Interest in acquiring a 51% stake in Nakumatt now says injection of the funds and issuing of guarantees to suppliers should enable the troubled retailer to get its operation back to normalcy and in turn repay its heavy debt that currently stands at between 30 billion shillings and 40 billion shillings. Under the proposed takeover deal, Tuskys will pump in 650 million shillings to cater to the employees' salaries and rent for the Nakumatt stores. Julie Owino reporting for Y254 News.
And now we take a quick break, but before we do that, remember we had asked you what is the best way to manage financial constraints, and that is the discussion you're going to be having later on after this break. So we take that quick break, don't go too far, we'll be right back.
Y254. Imagine.
Thank you so much for staying with Y254 channel. Now we get to that discussion on how we can manage financial constraint. And many thanks to my guests for coming in tonight. Of course, to my immediate left, George Dominic, who is a psychologist as well as a TV presenter. And just right next, joined in by Julie, a TV presenter, producer. Many times, I can't even finish. Aww. So let's just get into it. Managing financial constraints. First of all, what is financial constraint?
Yes, Julie.
Oh, financial constraint is that time. It's that period of time that you don't have money. It can't be defined by the number of time you don't have money, and then when you lack of money makes you not be able to buy something or do something.
See?
Like you really feel like you want to say something?
No, she knows English.
Really, Dominic?
I was constrained to explain what constraint means.
Oh,
yeah, so,
can you go ahead? Let me hear your version. Maybe it's different from what I said. Yeah.
Is it the same as what she says?
Yes, exactly. Exactly what she said. I don't think there's a point of repeating.
Okay.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly.
So, all right, okay, fine. She's already explained it to the best that she could, and clearly you agree with her.
Yeah.
So, as a young person, because we're looking in terms of the youth and the young people, what is the best way in which they can manage that financial constraint?
Well, I think in my opinion is the first thing is financial intelligence. What is money all about? What is money for? You know, I think what I tend to see is sometimes we see money first of all as something that I am a slave to, right? So something that I commit myself to instead of money committing myself to me. You know, money must work for me. So in that line, it must start with what do I want the money for? What I tend to think is sometimes, many times with millennials, the young people that we're talking about today, there is that sense of we don't know the difference between needs and wants, right? That's where we start. And if you do not understand the difference between what are wants and what are needs right now, then that's the first loophole that you're going to fall into, first constraint.
All right, and of course you're going to come back to that so that you can explain to us to get to understand the difference between these needs and want, because I think there's a thin line between that, but just to get Julie's feel on that.
Yes, I think one of the other things that contribute to that is that that can help young people. Don't save, don't actually spend more than what you earn. Because you see, most of the young people are actually spendthrifts. You want to go to Spain, let me say Spain, but that might seem impossible. You want to travel to TZ. And when you look at what you earn, it's actually less than how you want to spend it. So don't spend more than what you earn. You actually have to have a plan. Yes, you can actually travel wherever you want to go, but you must have a plan for this. Plan for it for quite some time. That once this time comes, you have enough money. Not that you'll start spending excess money and then you're going to be broke and start having that. It's a whole lot of work.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we get that one. So just coming back to you, the difference between the needs and wants. What exactly is that difference?
Actually, picking up from what she just said, we say savings is what you actually keep before you spend, right? Some people think saving is what remains after spending, but it's actually what you set aside before you start spending. So when it comes to needs and wants, we know that maybe one thing you have to start with the goals that I want. Where do I see myself maybe in the next 5 years? Starting from that, I now go backwards with what I'm earning right now. And with that, it helps me to realize, okay, according to the vision, my 5-year vision, what I want to spend to right now is a goal. I mean, is a need and not a want. One of the things that we're being challenged, Kenyan population gets challenged on is the power of image. That we like keeping an image, right? You want to go to a hotel that, you can't really afford. When you're an artist, you want to keep an image, that really you can't afford to keep it. And it's draining you. But you are making up a face.
Is that a major problem for the young people? Just to want to keep an image admits actually saving and looking for a later future. Is that really a problem?
Yes.
That's one big challenge amongst it. When people get to be moved to do stuff, depending on the kind of environment you hang around with. With that, I mean your peers. You see, you have friends who come from very rich families, and to them, money is not a problem. I want to buy this. Today I have these shoes. I want to go to Bucket. I'm going to shop in Woolworths, and you'd want to keep up with that for you to keep up with the friendship. That's if you're not that kind of person who's principled. You don't value where you come from and understand yourself as an individual. Hey, this is the amount of money that I'm given every day, and I'd love to have this. But if you also have good friends, there are also those kind of friends who pressure you to do what they want. So you'll want to keep up with them. They want you to go there, and they're like, you have to come with us. You don't have a boyfriend? We can get you a sponsor and stuff like that. That's how sponsorship comes along of people not being satisfied with what they have, and that's just pressure that's built up with friends and wanting to be like friends. It's one of the things that's killing up the youth in our generation today.
All right. And you see, just to get to understand, so for most young people, we go to school and sometimes it becomes a bit difficult to get a job afterwards. So according to you, what do you think could be the best strategy for the young people to actually ensure that they don't continue being broke?
Well, that's
use their talent, start something just before they can get to
you're answering that question pretty well, but where the academic system that we are running right now, it's for employees. The education system churns out employees. It's not churning out entrepreneurs. And this is the challenge. And so we have young people who are they have the academic papers, but they do not have the entrepreneurial spirit or even the skills to be able to do. So they got the knowledge, but they have no skills. Those are two separate things. So even if they have the knowledge, they end up lacking the skills and the attitude that they need to carry out a business. And so you have someone who has maybe very good academic papers, but they are unable to sustain what it takes to start a business and carry it through. So I think first of all is a mindset that we need to look into, the insecurity of a person. As I asked the question, personal insecurity can influence the way you spend money, because you want maybe to sustain an image to your girlfriend or to somebody else, as she said very correctly. So what I would say in this line, therefore, in your question is to first of all, and I'm going back to first of all, budget and know exactly what do I want my money for, and that means prior having a vision of where I want to see myself in 5 years. That is going to be a sort of a guide and a motivation when I'm spending money, when someone is borrowing me. And then the Kenyan culture of there is someone who says, when you start a business, don't give yourself a salary before 4 years are over. So you start a business and you start giving yourself a salary.
So continue investing in it.
Continue investing in it until 4 years. After 4 years is when you take the first salary. But so many Kenyan youth tell them that, and they'll be like, hey, no.
Hey, how can you do that? How can you just work myself off and then I'm not getting anything? So you find yourself you find yourself you're planning to do this, but then again you find yourself spending at the same time. So it ends up messing up your whole plan. You have to be very, very disciplined to be able to be a successful business person, like what you're saying.
Yeah, and I
Yes.
really like, well, you know, that just what both of you have said, and of course, just to come to the point of George, like you say that the first thing just to set up goals to ensure. But don't you think most young people have been talked to about, you know, just set up goals, have a vision, have a plan? What normally happens, because at the end of the day, they're still told nothing happens, but there's still this constraint. So what is your take?
The power of decision. You know, I think sometimes we don't play the power of decision. If I want to start a new habit, I have got to be decisive about it, right? And try to invest in myself physically. You know, you want to get rich, but you are not eating well. You know, we ignore that. You want to get rich, you want to be a person who delivers, but you're not sleeping enough. And this doesn't help in your memory, in your creativity. You want to go far, but you're not doing exercise. You know, that this is a challenge. You know, so clearly, so what happens is we set these goals first of January, big goals, but you know what, we are not investing in ourselves in order to be able to sustain them. Then we are not decisive enough, knowing that's going to be an uphill task. So we start off by the 15th of January, you're like, there's that series that I need to catch up with, you know. There is that I've not slept enough, you know, 9 more, 10 more hours, you know. So that's a challenge.
So just to come to you, Julie, in your own perspective, how do you think a young person can invest in themselves to ensure that every goal they write down, they can actually at least, even if it's not much of it, but at least bit by bit? How can they?
For a young person to actually manage to do that, number one, you must be focused. You have to understand, what's my purpose? What do I want at the end of this? Where do I want to be? Because you see, if you actually lose your focus and purpose in what you want at the end of it all, it will make you drag yourself back and start getting back to things that you start find yourself to be more than a spendthrift than what you expected. You start forgetting about your investment. So if you tend to lose your focus along the way and forgetting your purpose and just not having that dream of anymore of the reason as to why you started this, it will lead you to different diverse directions. So for me, I'd say focus and also purpose. These are two things that go hand in hand. If you don't have a purpose, then maybe you're going to lose your focus. Or if you don't have a focus, you're also going to lose your purpose.
You really touched on this purpose thing, and I would have loved us to talk about it because it's a whole big topic on its own, but we can't do that for now. Just to get, as you almost finish up with this interview, I'd just like to get your views on how a young person can ensure that they don't get into debts by borrowing, maybe to start something. Of course, you can borrow, but how do they ensure they don't get into debts that really can affect them much later?
This might sound like I'm being redundant, repeating the same thing over and over again. See, why do we end up buying that Subaru that we don't need? Because basically we are not clear with our purpose. We are not clear with what we want our life to stand for. Yeah, it still goes back. Back to that. When you spend on something that you really don't need, it's a want, it's a pleasure. You know, there's a lady who was asking that she's an entrepreneur, and she says young people say, oh, they're going from one party to another. And these young people don't have a business, they don't have land. And she asks, what are you celebrating every day and you don't even have money? All right? Some of us who already have some money, we are waking up at 4 to go and look even for more. And you are depending on the help money, on the pocket money of your parents, and you're going from one party to another. So the problem is, where do you see yourself and what are you willing to do to get there? That's going to guide the way you invest.
Okay, Julie?
I believe experience is the best teacher, because by the time you get to know about debts and before you actually get yourself into debt, you've had people talk about the loans that they have not been able to pay. You've witnessed your friends having debts that they're not able to pay. Let me say, though it's not wrong to actually get loans and all those stuff, but there's an experience, there's a story that you've already heard about these things happening. So one thing I'd actually say for you to plan for a young person who's actually growing up and trying not to be indebted to anyone, you must plan for, let me say, for the ones you love. Let me say, for an example, you start a family, you have your wife and kids, and then, God forbid, something happens along the way, you end up dying, which will happen to everyone. You end up dying, and then you'll find yourself in a situation, you leave your family in a situation where the debts that you didn't clear early enough get to follow up your family members. So one thing, plan for the ones you love, and that's by having an insurance. Yes.
All right. So what I'm getting, and of course what even our viewers are getting out there, is purpose, plan, focus, to ensure that all these things that we keep talking about, financial constraint, not getting a job, are actually dealt with and managed.
Definitely.
Thank you so much for coming in. Thank you so much for shedding light and of course giving us more insight on that topic.
Perfect.
And again, thank you so much for my guest for tuning in, not for my audience for tuning in tonight. That insightful discussion from our panelists. I hope you have learned a lot. My name is Doreen Arange. Enjoy the rest of the programming.